Writer and director M. Night Shyamalan has been on the upswing as of late, and after blowing everyone's minds with the end of Split, tying it into Unbreakable, the anticipation for Glass was at an all-time high. Does Shyamalan's 19-year journey meet a fulfilling end? My thoughts on Glass, coming up. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin. As always, if this is your first time checking out one of our videos, consider hitting that subscribe button where we take on the best and worst of cinema on a weekly basis. And here we go with an exciting first review of 2019. Glass is written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and it stars James McAvoy, Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, Sarah Paulson, and Anya Taylor-Joy. Bringing together the narratives of both Unbreakable and Split, Glass picks up immediately following the events of Split, as David Dunne is in pursuit of Kevin Wendell Crumb's superhuman personality known as the Beast. Operating within the shadows is Elijah Price, aka Mr. Glass, who, following the events of Unbreakable, remains contained inside Raven Hill Hospital, a glorified insane asylum. After a confrontation between Dunne and the Beast ends in the capture of both parties, the two join Mr. Glass in Raven Hill, where their abilities and very identities are put into question. It's a tricky thing to review a Shyamalan film given the unexpected nature of his work, and if you can believe it, it's even more difficult to just flat out discuss Glass without diving into too much detail, but I'll try my best. As I mentioned in my intro, Glass marks the end of a 19-year-long journey for Shyamalan in which he sought to deconstruct the superhero and comic book genre. In an age where Marvel and DC really own this genre, Shyamalan's plan of constructing a grounded real-world superhero trilogy based off of no pre-existing material and where each installment is distinctly its own is not only refreshing but bold. Regardless of what your opinion of Glass is, you have to admire the dedication, persistence, and originality of what Shyamalan was aiming for. It's with that in mind that the end result becomes much more disappointing. For all its ambition, Glass is merely half full, offering an underwhelming conclusion to the Unbreakable trilogy. Much of Glass feels as though it's building towards something bigger than what we ultimately get, and when Shyamalan takes the story in a certain direction, the execution is not only clumsily handled, but it leaves so much more to be desired. The questions posed and the central themes are interesting enough, and everything seems to fit in line with his real-world superhero commentary, but the end result is a film believing it's grander than it truly is. Shyamalan takes a very meta approach, trying to cleverly comment on the tropes of comic book stories. And while it's enjoyable and makes for some nice comedy early on, the novelty eventually wears off, and the film falls victim to many of the cliches that it was trying to deconstruct. Much like the previous two entries, Glass functions independently as a self-contained narrative, only using Unbreakable and Split to further flesh out our main characters. If Unbreakable functions as a deconstruction of the superhero origin story and Split a psychological examination of trauma, Glass takes the plunge into identity itself, posing the question of whether or not our minds can shape and ultimately determine our reality. It's an interesting concept that brings together the deconstructionist nature of this trilogy and asks not only our main characters but the audience as well as to whether or not these people genuinely are superheroes. Especially in the first half, Shyamalan really showcases the effect this notion has on each of the individuals, or in the case of Kevin Wendell Crumb, multiple individuals, fittingly within the confines of an insane asylum. Shyamalan takes these intimate moments of clinical examination to explore who these characters are as people and how their past could have influenced the belief that they have abilities. The two characters who get the most significant boost from this examination are most certainly James McAvoy's Horde and Bruce Willis's David Dunne. Shyamalan wisely carries over the notion of Kevin's mind being a victim to trauma from Split, expanding upon it further in what is by far the most compelling and emotional aspect of this film. Kevin's relationship with Anya Taylor-Joy's Casey Cook is a poignant poignant look at trauma victims, and Casey's empathetic affection towards Kevin helps shape his arc beautifully. As for David Dunne, the relationship between him and his son is continued here, and Shyamalan integrates unused footage from Unbreakable to illustrate that dynamic even further. Dunne has continued to work in the shadows as a vigilante for over 16 years, and the film manages to explore his struggle of wanting to hide who he truly is, yet also wanting to do the right thing. And speaking of the characters, let's touch on the performances next. Across the board, everyone gives a solid performance, save for Sarah Paulson, who I usually enjoy, but in Glass, I just found her to be very bland and one note. Many of her exchanges felt awkward, and it certainly didn't help that Shyamalan's dialogue for the character was very disjointed and clunky, which is a critique that truthfully rings true for a lot of the dialogue in Glass. But Paulson aside, our three main characters were excellent, especially James McAvoy, who shockingly manages to outdo his superb work in Split. Seriously, start up the Best Actor campaign for McAvoy, because his ability to pivot from over 20 different personalities back to back without any movie magic or trickery is nothing short of masterful. I was genuinely astounded by his performance. The amount of raw, physical, emotional, and nuanced acting being put on display here is nothing short of incredible. As for Bruce Willis, it's probably his best performance in quite some time, and thought he conveyed Dunne's internal identity crisis with a lot of subtle and palpable emotion. Samuel L. Jackson was, of course, excellent and brought back what we loved about Mr. Glass and Unbreakable, but was able to build from that previous performance as well nicely. Surprisingly, he wasn't in the film as much as I would have expected given the film's title, but Jackson makes the most out of what he's given. From purely a technical standpoint, Glass offers some incredibly creative and inventive cinematography, especially in regards to its fight sequences. Shyamalan adopts a unique style in these moments, very rarely shooting it from the perspective of the action, but from the people on the outside looking in. It's quite brilliant and surprisingly effective, and speaking of effective, the director also utilizes some subtle tracking shots, adding more to this guerrilla independent filmmaking aesthetic. Before I give you my final verdict on Glass, guys, why don't you take a second here and like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more movie reviews and movie-related content on a weekly basis. M. Night Shyamalan caps off his deconstructionist superhero trilogy with a thought-provoking conclusion that gives a whole new meaning to the identity of a superhero. The craftsmanship is undoubtedly top-notch, and the performances, especially from James McAvoy, were outstanding. I enjoyed and appreciated Knight's ambition with these films, and for the most part think he succeeded in what he set out to do, but I can't say I feel fulfilled with the conclusion we got. So for all of those reasons, and the reasons I've mentioned throughout my review, I'm ultimately going to be giving Glass In the Fight. And now I want to hear from you all. I want to know what your favorite M. Night Shyamalan film is. Be sure to let me know down in the comments section below. And if you've seen Glass, let me know your thoughts and opinions on that film down there as well. As always, guys, you can like Men vs. Movies on Facebook, follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men vs. Movies. And lastly, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can always give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that's going to do it for this review, guys. And until next time, take care.